Glory be to Jesus Christ. Glory be forever. We're here in St. Josaphat Cathedral in Edmonton, and we're looking at some of the painted images on the walls. And what's really interesting is the painting of these unusual beings. So you're looking at some unusual beings. Who are they? What are they? They have faces, look like human faces, but they also have wings, 6 wings to be exact. 2 wings to the side, 2 wings to the bottom, and 2 wings above. And when you start looking around, you find these beings all over the place. We're looking up at the dome right now, and you see those beings up there with the wings. They form like a throne upon which God is seated upon. So you see all the beings there, those unusual beings with their wings spread out, touching each other. And then when we continue walking around this way, we see another one of them right here with 6 wings, right above Mundair. And up at the top you see Saint Basil the Great, and he's surrounded by these spiritual beings who have 6 wings. And you see them again in the arch. Now let's look at the other side of the church. We have another one here, this unusual being with 6 wings. It's right here up on the wall, and it's flying just above of Edmonton. If you look at the picture below, you see St. Josaphat Cathedral on the left and the legislature building on the right-hand side. And then when you look up here, you see the Mother of God on the day of her Dormition and Assumption into heaven, and she's surrounded by these unusual beings with 6 wings, and it's as if they're lifting her up into heaven. Now, let's go into the Holy Altar, because we're going to find more of them there. Here we are in the Holy of Holies, the Holy Altar, the sacred space, and here on the back wall, you have an image of Jesus enthroned in heaven, and he holds the open book with the 2 letters of the Greek alphabet, Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Jesus, God, is the beginning and the end of all things. And surrounding his throne, what do you see? Again, you see those unusual spiritual beings with faces, and yet they have 6 wings. And they surround the throne, and it looks like they're actually carrying that throne, supporting it. To the right and the left, you see more unusual beings, but this time with a full body, or at least what it looks like a body, and with wings, but only 2 wings on this side and on this side. And again, we see the 6th wing beings here in this arch, right over on this side and this side over here. And look even closely here, we see more of them right over here in this color here, this arch over here. And more of them over here with St. Josaphat at the top, again surrounded by these unusual beings. Who are they? So that brings us to the topic of our next session, which is God creates. God creates an invisible world with spiritual beings. And in the beginning, there was only God. There was nothing else. There was no universe. There was just nothing. There was just God. And God was perfectly happy in himself. If you watched the last session on the Holy Trinity, then you would have learned that God, by his nature, he is love. He is Trinity, one God, but yet three persons who are in love. So they are constantly self-giving, giving oneself to the other, and so you have this motion of giving and receiving. God is love. So God was perfectly happy in himself. He didn't need to create. So why did he create? Well, God created everything freely. He had no need to create. Everything that created was a free gift. He created everything out of nothing, and he brought it into being so that everything could come to know him, to love him, and to serve him. Now, everything that God created was good, and when you put it all together, it was very good. In the beginning, God created the invisible world, which is a spiritual world, a world that we cannot see. We call this invisible world heaven. He created this world long before he created our visible world, the universe and the world as we know it. When God created the invisible world, he began to create living beings, spiritual beings, to live in his presence face to face. And we call these beings bodiless spirits. So they don't have physical bodies. They're bodiless spirits. Or we call them bodiless powers. Or another name is spiritual beings or heavenly spirits. Sometimes we call them angels, but really that's not the right name for them, because angel means messenger. And it's true that some of the spiritual beings are messengers. Not all of them are messengers. For the most of them, you will see that they simply glorify God or have some other function or vocation that they fulfill. So why did God create the heavenly spirits? The answer is quite simple: to know him, to love him, and to serve him. He created them in his image to reflect his glory, to reflect his light. And so let's look at this mirror. We have this mirror. I don't know if you ever played with a mirror, but this mirror, does it reflect light? Are you seeing light being reflected in this mirror? Can you see it? Yeah, right in the camera? Well, the closest the mirror is to the light, the more intense is the light that it reflects. How's that? The heavenly spirits were created to do the same, to be mirrors of the light, to reflect God and his beauty. Simple. Angels and all the heavenly powers, the spirits, are like mirrors that reflect the beauty of God and God as light. So what do the heavenly spirits look like? Well, they look like lights. They shine like lights, but each of them shines in a different way. They reflect God's glory in a different way, in a unique and beautiful way. So which heavenly spirits did God create first? Well, we don't know exactly the order in which God created the heavenly spirits. We can only guess that he started with those that were closest to him, closest to his throne in heaven in the invisible world. And the closest to him are the seraphim. And there you have it, he's right there. That being, the heavenly spirit just depicted just behind me there, is an example of a seraphim. They're called also the fiery ones, because they're so close to God and his throne in heaven that when they reflect God, they look like they're on fire. And God created many of them, thousands upon thousands, 10,000s upon 10,000s of them. The seraphim are many-eyed, which means that they can see in every direction. They have 6 wings, as you see, which means that they can move quickly in any direction. They're painted with a face. Why? Because it reminds us that they're created in the image of God, that they are persons. They're not just somebody, they're actually persons with great intelligence, wisdom, knowledge, and the gift of free will. They're capable of knowing God very closely, very intimately, very deeply, and they're also on fire with their love for God. So what do? Well, they simply look upon God. And the fancy word for looking upon God is to contemplate. They unceasingly contemplate God. They think about him. And all they can do is they look at him in awe at his beauty, and what do they say? Holy. And what does holy mean? Wow. God is wow. He's awesome. He's great. He's holy. He's totally different. He's set apart. Holy, holy, holy. That's what they sing unceasingly. Next, God created the cherubim and the thrones. They're very much like the seraphim, created persons, spiritual beings, many-eyed with 6 wings, with which they fly. And God created many of them, tens of thousands upon tens of thousands. The seraphim, cherubim, and thrones form the first choir of heavenly beings that surround the throne of God in heaven. They are the closest to him. They look at God with great love and awe. They contemplate his beauty, and they never cease to worship him. Holy, holy, holy. Next, we have a second group of heavenly spirits, which are called the second choir, or the middle hierarchy. To form this choir, God created 3 different kinds of heavenly spirits: the authorities, the dominions, and the powers. Once again, the authorities, the dominions, and the powers. We know very little about them. All we know is that they're closely connected with the universe, all the different stars and the planets throughout this visible universe. Finally, we have a third group of heavenly spirits, which are called the third choir, or the lowest hierarchy. These are the ones that are closest to us, to our solar system, the earth, life on earth, all the nations upon the earth, the leaders of nations, and all the people. To form this choir, the following heavenly spirits were created. God created first the principalities, the archangels, and the angels. So the archangels are those who are sent to look after nations and important leaders, and the angels that are sent to look after people, you and me, are the angels who serve as guardians. We call them guardian angels, and we believe that God has assigned an angel to every human being. All 3 choirs together, we call them the heavenly hosts, which means the heavenly armies. God is Lord and King of all the heavenly hosts, the heavenly armies. And again, 3 ranks or 3 choirs or 3 hierarchies, and they are the first hierarchy, the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones; the middle hierarchy, the authorities, dominions, and powers; and the lower hierarchy, the principalities, archangels, and angels. Hi again. I'm right in your face. So here we are, we're looking at the Holy of Holies, the Holy Altar. And the reason why we're here, because I want you to look at the writing that's in this arch right over here. You see it right here? You probably can't read it because it's in Old Slavonic. How many of you can read Old Slavonic? I don't see too many hands up there. Well, anyway, it's in Old Slavonic, and it reads from there to there, Sviat, 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 Hospod, Savaoth. Savaoth. Let's start with that word, Savaoth. Savaoth is a Hebrew word which means heavenly hosts or heavenly armies. And so Hospod means Lord, and Hospod Savaoth means Lord of hosts, the Lord of the heavenly hosts, all the angelic choirs. And so you have written here above the altar, Holy, 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 Lord Savaoth, Lord of the heavenly hosts, the heavenly armies. And that's what the spiritual beings of heaven constantly do. They see God face to face, and what do? They glorify Him, singing unceasingly, Holy, Holy, Holy. God filled the invisible world, which we call heaven, with a great multitude of spiritual beings or heavenly bodiless spirits. There are millions upon millions of them, billions. Now, when God created them, He took a risk. Everything that God created in heaven was good. But He created the bodiless spirits with a gift of a free will. Why? Because you need free will to be able to love. You have to be able to choose God freely in order to love Him. And so, with the gift of free will, there's always the chance that someone will say no to God. Someone will not listen, will not obey, and say, I, Lord, do not love you. And so, when God created the heavenly spirits, He took a risk. Some of them would love Him, know Him, and serve Him, but some would choose to reject Him and refuse to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him. From the Holy Scriptures, we know that there was a rebellion in heaven and a great war, a great battle. Why did it happen? Well, we don't know for sure. Some think that it was because God revealed to the heavenly spirits that He was going to create the human race, spiritual and physical beings that would be lower than the heavenly spirits, and He may have revealed to them that God the Son would become a man, and that He, both God and man, would be worshipped by all creation, and that His mother, a woman, would become greater in honor than all the heavenly spirits, even the seraphim and the cherubim. One of the heavenly spirits, whose name was Lucifer, which means bearer of light, just couldn't accept this. He would never bow down to the Son of God, becoming a man, and he would not venerate a living creature, a human being, lower than him. Why was he not the one to be venerated and exalted above all of God's creation? And so he rebelled against God and wanted to become equal to Him. He provoked other heavenly spirits to join him in his rebellion against God, and Lucifer, the bearer of light, became Satan, the accuser and the deceiver. There was one heavenly spirit, an archangel, who stood up against Lucifer and those who rebelled against him. He stood up and cried out, Michael, which means, who is like God? And so his name became Michael. And so war broke out in heaven. Michael led the heavenly armies of God against Satan, the dragon, and the rebellious spirits who followed him. And to the left, you see the archangel Michael with his sword in hand, defeating Satan and his rebellious spirits. We read the following in Scripture in the book of Revelation. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his spirits fought the dragon, and the dragon and his evil spirits fought, but they could not prevail, nor was there a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his evil spirits were cast out with him. They fell from the invisible heavenly world to the earth, the visible world, the world we live in. Since they rebelled against God, they lost their ability to reflect God's light, his glory, and his beauty, and so they lost their light, their beauty. They became dark and ugly. Here we have an image of the archangel Michael in triumph over Satan, the accuser and the deceiver. And we see Satan has lost his beauty. He has become dark and ugly. Ooh. This concludes our session today on the creation of the invisible world and the fall of the bodiless spirits. In our next session, we will look at the creation of the visible world and the fall of the first human pair, the man and the woman. Glory be to Jesus Christ. Glory be forever.